Banana slam jam.
Hello everybody, this is going to be a 4K Anti-Mage replay. His comments was that I usually play offlane /4 because I like being all over the map and contributing to team fights. So even when I do play carry, it's heroes like Ricky's Clinks or Monkey King. So he's obviously playing a hero that he's not only uncomfortable with as the hero itself, but the play style of the hero is quite the opposite of what he's saying he likes to play. I'm not 100% sure how I feel about the Ringer regen. I don't think it's terrible, but you do have a Warlock. So I think in lanes, I like to think about my supports and what they offer me. If your support is a hero that offers you sustain, you should try to skimp out on sustain. If your hero is like Coddle, where it offers you mana, you should try to skimp out on mana items. Just try to, in general, itemize against not only what you're against, but also your support that is on your team.
Hello, I'm Gabe Newell. You've just achieved First Blood. Thanks and have fun.
Let's see here. You use creep aggro pretty well. Obviously just a bit unfortunate you're missing the last hits. Your aggression is clearly good. I kind of expected to see an aggressive anti-mage here. So as a carry, I think it's really important that that first move you made right here is really good. And the second they back off, you have to back off, because during this time, this is happening. Since you guys are pushing the wave, if you want to blink on them and potentially be aggressive, I don't mind missing 1 or 2 creeps. But you can't linger. This part is not okay. It's a tough trap. It's a tough habit to get out of. I like your aggression. I think it's good. I think on Anti-Mage it's super good when you're level 2 and they're level 1 to play like this. But you do have to balance it with your missing of creeps. Because on Anti-Mage, you're not a level dependent hero. You are a last hit dependent hero. So you do miss 3 creeps for that. Right away the lane is pushed. I would ask my support to pull the small or large camp. If they don't, so be it. I would still feel very confident to hit this Pudge. Obviously, you just need to work on your CSing, but not much to say about that other than just getting better at it. It's hard to CS with 3 range creeps. That is part of the lane equilibrium thing, though. And when you chase for too long, it gets even worse. Your Warlock did pull the large camp. That's good. During these times, when my support pulls a large camp, like right here, I usually prefer to spend my time like blinking over here and killing the centaur as quickly as I can. I like to look in, you might have even done it earlier, where instead of like the 1 creep you get here, or potentially get here, you can actually just leave and kill these creeps. You're not really losing out on anything, and you're also making it so you're not sharing the XP of the big camp with the other heroes. And right here, you almost didn't get the last hit when you ended up getting it. So something worth considering is you don't have to stay here with your support. Giving him like the levels from lane on these like denies under tower and shit while you're killing this, you're not really losing out on anything. So just consider that as like a nice option for you. I'm usually perfectly content to be farming a pull camp rather than in lane.
Dire's middle tower is under attack. A mysterious force.
So my question is why you're hitting creeps forward here. I don't think this is good. I think on Anti-Mage, on like Monkey King, on these heroes that rely on their passive for the advantage, And they also don't have a super good way to like clear jungle levels like 1 through 5. There's just no benefit to shoving the lane out most of the time. Like, the only reason you would shove the lane out is one of two things. One, you actually can't lane if there's 2 heroes here. I disagree. Like, I think what I'm saying is I think you can lane if there's 2 heroes here. Like, if they're in your face here, I think you can still lane. They're both level 3. They don't necessarily kill you or anything. So that's one reason. And then the other reason would be that you can capitalize on pushing the lane out and farming jungle at the same time. Neither of those things apply here. Whenever I play Monkey King specifically, who I would relate to this, not because they're like similar heroes, but because both of them don't really jungle until like level 7 or 8 with treads kind of thing. I sit the lane near my tower as much as possible. So thinking about the benefit of actually pushing the lane and the drawbacks of also pushing the lane, this is an unnecessary equilibrium push, I think. And it's like, it's just not good if the lane's near their tower in general. Like, you obviously don't want to be a pussy in order to, like, I don't want you not being aggressive early in order to keep the lane from pushing, but right there where you have, like, no lane contest and you're just hitting the creeps. See where the lane's at now? You just don't want this, right? The lane being here is, you're trying to kill him with Fatal Bonds. The lane being here is just strictly worse than it being back. Also on Anti-Mage, you don't represent any tower pressure. Like, Anti-Mage is not a hero that you're going to make use of the catapult wave and take their tower. That's just not going to happen, right? So all I'm listing is all the possible benefits of pushing the wave, and if they don't apply to you, you don't push the wave. Reasonable blink there. The 2-point spell shield was a bit odd, but I do understand why you did it. Wasn't really commenting on it. I don't usually see that very often, and I'm not necessarily saying it's good or bad. Nice kill.
Arcane power.
Dire's bottom tower is under attack.
Killing spree.
Radiant's middle tower is under attack. Dire's middle tower is under attack.
So let's go ahead and rewind. You got the kill on Pudge.
Dire's bottom tower is under attack.
You take a Thunder Strike from Disruptor.
Killing spree.
Push out the lane. Take another Thunder Strike from
Radiant's middle
Disruptor.
tower is under attack.
At this point, if I were you, I wouldn't really care about making it back to bottom ASAP. Disruptor isn't a hero you exactly want to lane against because of what you just saw. I would have spent all of my health and mana killing these camps. Right here and here. There's just no particular reason for Anti-Mage to want to lane at this point. I talked about it in one of my coaching sessions. Or one of my replays, I can't remember. Oftentimes, Anti-Mage just can't really lane against much after maybe the 8-minute mark, usually. It's like a very luxurious Anti-Mage game if you can lane. And in that case, there's no reason to spend your time going back to base rather than just hitting creeps. Obviously, the goal on heroes like Anti-Mage is to be hitting creeps the highest percentage of the time that you possibly can. And obviously, the ideal situation is to go to your lane. But if you're in this situation where Disruptor's there, there's just no reason to. The way I usually look at Anti-Mage is I don't want to be in lane, or I want to be in lane, but I don't really have the capabilities of being in lane very often. So every time they present to me the allowance to go in lane, meaning they show 4 heroes top, for instance, I would immediately go bottom because I know I'm not going to be able to get much lane farm in this game. And because they're giving me that rare window to get lane farm, I'll take it when I can get it. So that's how I kind of view Anti-Mage. Similar heroes are like the Drows of the world, where just early game, either they're not strong enough to lane because of like Anti-Mage, he just doesn't out-trade anybody really at this stage. And for Drow, she's too squishy. So you just want to get as much farm as possible. You don't mind being low. You don't need to be fight ready at this point. You know, you're not like an offlaner or 4 where you need to regen back up and be prepared to help your team. You're doing everything you're doing in order to get as much farm as possible.
Dire's middle tower is under attack.
And just notice how you're in this weird spot where you don't really want to walk out. You're kind of just sitting in your tower. You don't feel necessarily comfortable here. And that's why it's like, who cares if you're in lane full if you'd be just as comfortable hitting a creep camp at, 20% health, Now that they all show mid, you could have come back bottom. That's like a perfect example. You could have cleared the creep camps, gone back to base, walked out of base at 10 minutes, and then if you saw them mid, you could maybe TP or blink your way bottom. That's like a perfect example of the series of events you can consider happening. Another example where you had a teammate ganking for you. I've talked about that in my other Anti-Mage game. Pretty much the only time you enter lanes is to gank with your team in order to allow yourself to enter lanes. That's exactly what you're doing. Pudge is dead for 4 seconds. I was about to say you better not hit that jungle camp. Good priority of order there. The Pudge kind of seems dead set on coming back to your lane. Not a huge fan of maxing out your E. This is the point in the, or your Q even. This is the point in the game where you are blinking from place to farm. It's really important to think about what your skill builds offer you, like what each skill does for you. On Anti-Mage, obviously your Q makes you more aggressive, your E makes you more defensive, and your blink is for farming. So if you're farming, which at this stage in the game you almost always are, unless it's some weird meta where people are going like, Vanguard Anti-Mage or some shit, you should build the item that fits that, right? And right now, you just have 1 point blink, or you should skill build the way that fits that. And the 1 point blink just possibly got you killed, but your skill build also doesn't represent the way you're supposed to be playing. So you keep returning to bottom. I don't necessarily hate that you wanted to go bottom earlier, but this is why it's the dead lane, okay? So, your hero. It's a really important skill to learn. It's a hard skill to learn. I'm still working on it because I'm similar to you where I naturally don't want to play these heroes that have to play super passive. You just have to think about the dead lane concept and ask yourself, where's the opponent going to make their moves? It's always going to be bottom or mid. Bottom or mid. Bottom or mid. That's where they're going to go. And you're a hero that doesn't want to fight, right? So the key to farming patterns on Anti-Mage is that you farm where the opponent doesn't want to be. It's just that simple, like where they're not going to go. Your triangle would be the case right now. Early on in the game, maybe their heroes aren't strong enough to rotate to you. So usually the time that you leave your safe lane is based on how you think their heroes' timings line up. Their 2 cores don't really rotate early, right? So like TA, Lifestealer, they're not going to rotate that much early. They're pretty much going to sit in their lane and farm. But once TA gets like either Blink or Deso, somewhere around the 15-minute mark, somewhere around 14 to 15, that seems like a pretty reasonable time for TA to get a Deso or Blink. She's going to look to do stuff, right? Is she going to force stuff? No, but like, could she easily gank you with like a +1 or 2? Absolutely. Like, that's the timing of the opponent heroes. So it's something to think about where if you look at it in hindsight, it's quite obvious that this is a potential happening, right? This is a potential occurrence that the TA +1 or 2 heroes is going to come kill you in your own safe lane, because that's naturally where they're going to make moves, as we understand every single game, and their heroes have that power spike. Now, certain heroes obviously have power spikes far earlier than 15 minutes, and that's oftentimes why Anti-Mage can get potentially booted out of his safe lane at, 7 minutes into the game. All it really comes down to is when that is, right? So you definitely stuck around 1 TP too long, and that's going to heavily delay your timings. So.
Dire's top tower is under attack.
Dominating performance.
So you've now realized the triangle is your best friend. Could have even considered farming mid here, but I'm fine if you want to just jungle and let somebody else have it. When it comes to what's in your backpack and what's not, what are you doing right now? Are you fighting or are you farming? So you have a wand in your inventory when you're farming instead of a Quelling Blade. Doesn't really make much sense. I would have even prioritized the Quelling Blade over that Ring of Regen, but I think the Ring of Regen's technically better than the wand when you're just hitting creeps, right? So, but I'd be fine if you did either. But the fact that your main item for farming is in your backpack, obviously just is a bit odd. So notice how, again, you get ganked in your own jungle. You're dragging yourself into fights that you don't want to be in based on your map positioning. It's just that simple. If there's a triangle to farm, if there's a safer lane to farm, you need to be there. It's just a bit of inefficiency. Yeah, you didn't die, but it's inefficiency, right? Why are you at these fights? I understand your natural inclination. I expected this exactly when you gave your description of who you are as a player. You have to literally turn the game upside down and say, this is how I normally play, this is where fights occur, this is where I like to play, now do the opposite. That's really the best approach I have. That's what I've tried to do. I try to think about, if I were the opponent, where would I be making plays? And then I go to the opposite side. Where's a fight going to happen? And I go to the opposite side, right? And you're just taking these fights head on. Notice how every single fight you're at, right? The opponent's plays, bottom and mid, bottom and mid. Why are you always bottom or mid, you know? It's the same idea here. Why are you de-warding, you know? You're not a Slark. You don't know for sure where their wards are. So this is an example where, because they've proven they're not bottom and their objective is actually Roche, playing bottom is exactly what you're supposed to do, because this is away from the fight. You're not strong enough to fight. And, yeah. Oftentimes what people don't realize is that in this circumstance, you have to imagine, when you do this, when you show in lane like this, what's the opponent's response going to be? Isn't it almost certainly to TP either tier 2 or tier 3 and or tier 3? You know what I mean? Like, they're going to TP one of those two, if not both. So if they're going to TP there, where should you blink when you're trying to escape? And the answer is clearly left, right? The fact that you're this deep with no TP is also really bad. But retreating straight back to your base, meaning down your lane, is almost never, or I don't want to say almost never, is quite often not the correct escape route. Be less predictable, basically. Rather than doing, you know, this is down the lane towards my base, do the where are they going to be, go away from that thought process. So yeah, you blink into the TA and die here. Obviously a very bad death. Unnecessary. I never do those. Crappa. At this point, the game's hard. The team's showing a bunch of heroes bottom. The enemy team, that is.
That was unreactive again.
Probably would have prioritized that wave over the small camp first, but either way, it's not terrible just because you see them. Forced one to TP top.
Radiant's top tower is under attack. Dire's top tower has been killed.
Reasonable forcing of reactions there. So why are you forcing reactions? You're forcing reactions in order to farm. I would have definitely prioritized bottom wave over the jungle, but since Kunko was there, maybe it was okay to do that. The point of prioritizing waves over jungle, if possible, is the only way you can force them to react is by shoving lanes, and by forcing them to react to you like you did top there, it allows you to farm other parts of the map safely. A concept often that is not understood by people in your bracket. You have to remember, where's the opponent playing right now? Alright? You see them playing top, and you're retreating to your own jungle here. Like right now? Isn't it actually just safer to play here, right? Like, isn't it less likely they're here? So, like, when you're Radiant, safest part of the map's usually here. when you're Dire, that's the most passive part of the map is probably a better way to word it. When you're Dire, this is the most passive part of the map. So when the opponent is playing super aggressive, isn't it, you know, directly correlated? The more passive that area is on the map, the less likely they are to be there. So don't blink back to your side of the map. Stay on their side of the map. That's not where they want to be, right? Could they find you? Absolutely. But the last thing you want to do is find yourself on your own side of the map when the opponent's already playing there. You need to keep representing the split push threat as best you can. So we're going to be very clear. Anti-Mage builds Manta Battle Fury 99.9% of games. There's no creativity, there's no exceptions. They have single target physical damage. That's what they have. TA and Lifestealer. Manta is the single most survivability item you could buy against that. It just is. Because the minute TA blinks on you, you push Manta. That is your most survivable kit. There's no tankiness or survivability you can buy against that. You have to make it so she doesn't hit you for the 3 hits she wants to kill you in. And thus, instead of relying on 35% RNG, you should rely on an item that guarantees that. Yeah, just don't get too creative, especially when you're playing a newer hero. You know, you're new to the hero. Just copy-paste, and then get creative later. So you force them all top again, kind of. So this is a circumstance that when you force them all top, you kind of just have to TP back bottom. Because by blinking back to base, now what are you using your TP for? Right, like, you don't actually have a TP for, like, your TP doesn't do anything right now. So that's why I like to TP here. It's like a weird spot, though. This game's kind of over at this point. I think you've also ruined your own game by going for the butterfly. I understand you're newer to this type of thing. I'm about ready to wrap up this replay, but really the message is, if you're an aggressive type player, put yourself in the mind of the opponent. Where would they want to make moves? What part of the map are they trying to play around? What towers are they trying to take? And then just don't go there. If you're an anti-mage type of hero that wants to be farming, wants to be playing passive. And you try to constantly update yourself with this kind of stuff. What information are they revealing? What heroes on their team do what? You know, who's the one that's rotating? Who's the one that's setting up the kill? Who's the one that's going to show in lane and when they're going to go for the kill? What heroes on their team represent what? Who do I want to be farming against? Meaning, like, if I run into somebody while I'm farming, who do I want it to be? When you're playing Anti-Mage, that's usually nobody. So you have to think about where Lifestealer wants to be farming, where TA wants to be farming. You know, this is all the stuff you need to think about. Yes, it's a lot to take in, but it's something you can start paying attention to even at your bracket. Since you're so used to being an aggressive player, I think the way to learn how to be a passive player is to put yourself in the mind of those aggressive players and just do the opposite rather than, like, building from the ground up. I know I've kind of repeated myself on that, but I really do think that's the key for you. So check that out and try that approach. Curious to see how it goes for you, and I hope you enjoyed the replay.
A few moments later.
I think he wanted a replay because he knows he's bad at Anti-Mage, conceptually. I don't know why people are bashing him. He told me in the replay, like, in the description, he literally said, like, this is not my natural playstyle. I'm trying to adjust, and how can you help me here? So it's like, when you see me on heroes I'm not necessarily comfortable with, I look shit, right? And then you watch me on Slark, and it's like, you know, I don't know why people are so hateful or, like, so mean about that kind of shit. The guy's trying to learn.